Analysts are now considering several possibilities. One is that Iran was preparing a major coordinated strike across multiple fronts to overwhelm Israeli defenses. Another is that Tehran was attempting to create a crisis that would shift international attention away from their nuclear program. A third possibility, the one worrying officials the most, is that Iran was attempting to establish a new baseline of aggression, one where direct attacks on Israeli territory become normalized. But today, Israel took that card off the table. They didn't wait for international consensus. They didn't defer to diplomatic channels. They didn't hope the threat would resolve itself. They acted. What we're watching now is a test of willpower. Iran wants to see whether it can outlast Israeli pressure. Israel wants to show that no target is beyond their reach. The United States wants to prevent regional war, and China, now hosting the supreme leader, wants to prevent the collapse of a strategic partner. Tonight, we've heard from intelligence sources who are now monitoring unusual activity at Chinese military installations. They say Beijing has not publicly acknowledged Khamenei's presence. They say Chinese officials are scrambling to manage the diplomatic fallout, and they say Iran's decision to send their supreme leader to Beijing is likely part of a broader survival strategy intended to secure Chinese protection in the event of regime collapse. But Israel is not backing down. In fact, Israel is doubling down. Their response today, swift, precise, and devastating, sent a message to Tehran that sanctuary does not exist, and it sent a message to Beijing that hosting the supreme leader will come with consequences. As the night goes on, we expect more details to emerge about what exactly Tehran hoped to achieve with their aggressive posture. But what we do know is that Israel's response was timely. It prevented what could have been a devastating attack on Israeli civilians. It eliminated key figures in Iran's military command structure. And it exposed the fragility of a regime that has projected strength for decades. What happens next will depend on what Tehran does in the next 48 hours. If they escalate, this moment will be remembered as the beginning of a wider war. If they retreat, Israel and the United States have already shown they are prepared to press their advantage. They have shown they are ready to respond. And tonight, for the first time in 45 years, the supreme leader of Iran is not in Iran. Tehran is quiet, too quiet. And when Tehran is quiet, it means the regime is calculating. It means they are choosing their next move carefully. Because tonight, the Islamic Republic learns something. They have learned many times before, but never quite like this. Israel will find you. Israel will reach you, and Israel will not wait. This story is far from over, but tonight one thing is clear. The balance of power in the Middle East has shifted. The illusion of Iranian invincibility has shattered, and the world is watching what comes next. And we will be here, watching every detail as the next phase unfolds. Tonight, we begin with an assassination that us intelligence officials had feared, Israeli commanders had prepared for, and the entire Middle East had been warned about for months. An assassination that unfolded not over days, not over weeks, but in a matter of hours. Hours that destabilized the Iranian regime to its core. Hours that sent shockwaves through the halls of power in Tehran. Hours that forced the supreme leader of the Islamic Republic to do something no Iranian leader has done in 45 years. He ran. What happened in Tehran early this morning crossed a line that every regional power had hoped would hold. And when that line broke, Israel did not hesitate. They responded with precision, with overwhelming force, and with a message that is still echoing across the region tonight. But here's what nobody expected. Within 6 hours of the strike, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, the 85-year-old supreme leader, the man who has ruled Iran with an iron fist since 1989, boarded a plane. And that plane did not land in Damascus. It did not land in Moscow. It landed in Beijing. For months now, there had been signals, not official announcements, not public declarations, just signals that the regime in Tehran was preparing something unprecedented. Iran has been aggressive, yes, but they have been calculated in their aggression. Their moves have followed a certain logic, a rhythm, almost a doctrine. They strike through proxies. They deny involvement. They escalate slowly. They never expose their senior commanders unnecessarily. But what set off alarm bells in Washington, in Tel Aviv, in every intelligence agency monitoring the region this week was that the rhythm went silent. Analysts who monitor Iranian military activity know the indicators, the movement of Revolutionary Guard commanders. The unusual communication patterns between Tehran and Hezbollah, the repositioning of ballistic missile units, the sudden disappearance of key figures from public view, all of that went quiet. And whenever Tehran goes quiet, it means something is about to get very, very loud. West Central Command had been tracking unusual activity for at least 72 hours before the strike. Israeli intelligence, the Mossad, Shin Bet, and Unit 8200 had been watching even longer. What they saw worried them. General Mohammad Reza Zahedi's successor, a man known only by his operational codename within Western intelligence circles, had surfaced in Tehran for the first time in months. This was not a man who traveled openly. This was not a man who attended public functions. This was the architect of Iran's shadow war, the man responsible for coordinating Hezbollah's missile strategy, the Houthis Red Sea campaign, and the militia networks that have killed American soldiers and Israeli civilians alike. And he was in Tehran, in the open, almost as if he wanted to be seen. Early this morning, Israeli Air Force assets detected what they described as a high-value target opportunity, including communication signatures and movement patterns that had not been observed in over 18 months. These are the kinds of indicators that Israel only acts upon when they are signaling something very specific, that a strike is imminent from Iran, that a senior commander has become too dangerous to ignore, or that a window of opportunity has opened that may never open again. Israeli officials didn't know which category this fell into or whether it fell into all three at once, but what they did know was that Iran's military posture was shifting. And when a regime like Tehran shifts posture without explanation, even by a small margin, Jerusalem pays attention. The intelligence was corroborated within hours. The target was confirmed, and the order was given. The statement issued by the Israeli Defense Forces tonight was not normal. It was not routine. It was not symbolic. It was a declaration. Senior officials, after an emergency cabinet meeting, described Iran's recent posture as provocative, destabilizing, and perhaps most importantly, operationally threatening in a way that demanded immediate action. Deterrence only works if the target hesitates. Iran did not. In fact, their preparations in recent weeks were among the most aggressive we've seen since the Islamic Revolution. Here's what we know. Within hours of confirming the target's location, Israeli forces launched a precision strike deep inside Tehran. These weren't the airstrikes we've seen in Syria. These weren't the targeted killings in Lebanon. These were stealth operations into the heart of the Islamic Republic, operations that Israel only conducts when they are preparing to eliminate a threat at the highest level. The target, General Hossein Salami's most trusted operational commander. The location, a secured compound in northern Tehran. The result, confirmed elimination. Tonight, IDF sources confirmed that Israeli forces conducted a precision strike on multiple targets within Tehran, including a command facility that had recently been activated for what analysts believe was the coordination of a major retaliatory operation against Israeli territory. Israel struck before Iran could act. They hit the command center. They hit the communication nodes. They hit the convoy of vehicles that were likely preparing to evacuate senior commanders. In other words, Israel targeted the central nervous system of Iran's offensive capability, the infrastructure that would have made any attack operational. This is what made Western intelligence warnings so urgent. Iran's posture wasn't just symbolic. It was they didn't target political figures directly. They hit military command infrastructure. They hit the men responsible for planning attacks on Israeli soil, and they did it with a precision that has left Tehran reeling. And here's where the story becomes even more significant. Intelligence analysts now believe that Iran's recent posture was designed to test the resolve of the Israeli government after months of political Revolutionary Guard's attention easily, but today Israel did. Defense analysts speaking with Western media under anonymity described Iran's recent moves as probing operations, a way to test red lines without crossing them overtly, but Israel proved today that they remain both capable and willing to act. Their strikes were not only devastating, they were calibrated so precisely that civilian casualties appear to have been minimal. That calibration matters because it shows restraint alongside strength. It shows that Israel is not reacting emotionally. They are executing more than at any point since 1967. American support has not wavered. It has intensified, and the Iranian regime is not celebrating. They are evacuating. What makes this moment so dangerous and so revealing is that Iran's latest posture happened at a time when Khamenei is under unprecedented internal pressure. Hardliners want escalation. Reformists want de-escalation. The Revolutionary Guard wants to protect its assets, and the Iranian public, battered by sanctions, inflation, and years of repression, wants change. Khamenei is balancing these demands while facing the most direct threat to his regime since the Green Movement of 2009. And when leaders in that position make sudden moves, they're not doing it from strength. They're doing it from pressure. They're doing it from vulnerability. The decision to flee, and make no mistake, that is what this is, reveals something that Tehran has tried to hide for months. The regime is afraid. Washington's statement, now circulating across every major news network, was designed to signal that the United States is not willing to allow regional destabilization. State Department officials said plainly that Iran's recent posture was inconsistent with any pathway toward de-escalation. That is diplomatic language for, we know what you were planning and we supported stopping it. You don't usually hear that tone from Washington unless something serious is at stake. Pentagon officials confirmed that U.S. assets in the region remain on heightened alert. CENTCOM has repositioned carrier strike groups, and the message to Tehran is unmistakable. Any retaliation will be met with overwhelming force. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu addressed the nation in a direct, unwavering speech tonight. He said, "We will not wait for our enemies to strike first. We will find them, we will reach them, and we will eliminate them." He said, "Tonight, the men who planned to kill Israelis are no longer planning anything." And he said, "To our enemies watching, this is not the end. This is a warning. These are not rhetorical flourishes. These are statements from a government that understands just how high the stakes have become." Here's what makes the situation even more concerning. Iran's recent posture wasn't isolated, along with their military preparations. Hezbollah also increased rocket fire into northern Israel over the past week. Houthi forces launched their most sophisticated Red Sea attack in months. Iranian-backed militias in Iraq increased drone operations targeting US bases. All of this happened within the same 72-hour window when Tehran moves multiple pieces at once. It means something larger is underway or was underway, because tonight those pieces are in disarray.